Hey, I'm Anna.
And I'm Lize, and today we're going to look at different ways we learn best. Now, I know it doesn't sound super exciting, but hang in there. I think you'll be surprised. Now, Anna, when you have to learn something, are you one of those people that have to be boxed in and super focused without distractions, or do you walk around? How do you learn best?
I think I learn best by actually just doing what it is that I'm learning. If I'm just taking information in, I will get lost very easily. I just have to do it. That's the way it's gonna stick.
Well, you know, that's actually pretty interesting, because one of the best ways that's been proven for us to take in and learn has been to copy behavior. I mean, if you look at kids, nobody specifically tells them how to walk or how to drink from a cup or how to kick a soccer ball. Kids watch and they copy.
Okay. You know, I see what you're doing here. Yeah. I see where we're going with this. This actually ties in perfectly with our big idea this week. We know how to be faithful because God is faithful.
Exactly, and God never changes, so we can look to God to learn how to be faithful, how to be loving, how to be kind. Let's take a look at this God story to learn more.
What type of sandals do frogs wear? Open-toed. Ha! Hi, friends. It's Mark, and I'm glad to be back. Do you have a special friend in your life that is faithful? I do, and that's my wife, Maria. She is always there for me, cares for me, and loves me, cooks food for me, and remembers all the things that I don't. That brings me to today's big idea. We know how to be faithful because God is faithful to us. In this series, we are talking about the fruits of the Spirit. Previously, we talked about love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and goodness. Today, we're talking about faithfulness. Like I said earlier, today's big idea is we know how to be faithful because God is faithful to us. So how can we know that God is faithful? Well, let me tell you. Let's go back to the story of Abraham. Abraham was promised by God that he would be a father of many. So Abraham had a son named Isaac, and Isaac then had a son named Jacob. And Jacob, his name was changed to Israel, and Israel is a nation of many. God promised to rescue the Israelites from Egypt and slavery. And so he did, and that proves that God is faithful. God made a covenant, which is a very important promise, to the Israelites during the time of Moses. It started as what we know as the Ten Commandments, which is a bunch of rules of how to live life and how to worship him. This covenant meant that God would be their God, and Israel would always be his people. God remained faithful. God promised King David that his family line would be a royal line that would last forever. That came true through the birth of Jesus, and Jesus is our King forever. Therefore, God once again proved that he is faithful. So God makes a new covenant, a better covenant, a covenant through Jesus, and we know that it will happen because God is faithful. And this new covenant involves you and me. Let's go back to Hebrews. The day is coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and Judah. This covenant will not be like the one I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand and led them out of the land of Egypt. They did not remain faithful to my covenant, so I turned my back on them, says the Lord. But this is the new covenant I will make with the people of Israel on that day, says the Lord. I will put my laws in their minds, and I will write them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. God promised that he was going to make this new covenant, and then he did, and that proves that God is faithful. Maybe you're wondering what it meant when God said that he will put his laws in our hearts and minds. He meant we will know the difference between right and wrong without being reminded of it time and time again. We will just know. Let's go back to Hebrews. When God speaks of a new covenant, it means he has made the first one obsolete. It is now out of date and will soon disappear. So this covenant is new and improved. It's the best promise yet. It's the covenant that God made to us through Jesus. This promise is when we live with Jesus as Lord of our lives, we get to live in God's kingdom and be with God forever. And what is God's kingdom like? Think of the best experience you have ever had, and God's kingdom is way better than that. So now we know what it means to be faithful, to be trustworthy, and keep our promises, because that's what God does for us. And we can be faithful in our relationships and to God because God has shown us how. What does God's faithfulness look like? Keeping His word, doing what He says He will do, and always loving us. That's what Jesus means when He says to us, let your yes be yes and your no be no. That means that we are going to do what we say we're going to do, especially if we make a commitment to God. When we say we're going to do something, be faithful and actually do that. When we say that we trust God, we need to trust God even when we don't know what He's doing. When we say we love God, love Him, even when times are tough. So let's trust that the Spirit of God is in us and that we will remain faithful. We know how to be faithful because God is faithful to us. Thanks for hanging out with me again. I'll see you later.
You know, we've only covered a small portion of the Bible, and we can already see how many times God did exactly as He promised. Now, can you imagine what it would look like if we became people who lived by that example and were as faithful as God is?
Oh man, relationships will change. I mean, people will actually do what they say. There won't be any backstabbing. There won't be any bullying. People will actually show love instead of just talking about it. I mean, we could actually be looking at world peace.
What a different place it would be, for sure. We want to introduce you to our friends Kiana and Sydney. These are two girls who both attended youth group growing up and learned how to draw close to God because of the example they had through their student leaders. Let's see the story and watch how it pans out.
My name's Kiana. This is my best pal, Sid, and she has a really cute puppy named Smokey.
And I'm over here a lot because Kiana makes the best coffees. So Kiana and I like to hang out a lot, and one of our favorite things to do is bake and like make good food.
Look what I got! Wow.
We're at university, so we really like to indulge in the nicer things every once in a while. That's what we like to get up to. When I was growing up, I knew about the church and all of that. Like, I grew up in a Catholic household, but I never really had a deep faith during that time.
I went to church a little bit as a kid, but my parents were kind of more Easter, Christmas Christians, and other than that, I didn't really like Sunday school, so I didn't really learn that much about anything until later on in high school. Once we got introduced to the meeting house, we realized they really needed some female youth leaders, so we just kind of got involved with that.
Yeah, and it was a really good fit for us. I mean, we spent all of high school kind of having this role, but more as a student, so it's been a really great opportunity to be university students and to have this in our lives. Like, it's just so much fun hanging out with the kids and like getting to be there on midweeks and on Sundays. About 90% of our conversation is just how to be better youth leaders for our kids. Like, we like argue, we're like, this is how we can do things better here. And like, I think, yeah, like kids just have such a huge part of our hearts. Like, we want the best for them.
Yeah, and I think for us really what it comes down to is really a core part of us getting to know Jesus was how our youth leaders were with us, and more than anything, we want to be that same kind of love and friend for our kids.
I feel like as students, obviously our studies are important, but I feel like a lot of our life is really dedicated to friendships.
Yeah.
And like,
I know, our free time is spent either with each other or with the youth. Like, I think that's all we really do, okay?
yeah.
So for us, friendship is really just always being there for one another in whatever situation.
We're there, we see each other almost every day, and so it's just that check-in. We're pretty much each other's families here.
It took a little bit for us to become as close as we are now. So even if you don't have any like really strong friendships or you feel like you're lacking in that regard, God will play into your life and bring those people to you.
It's so worth it to just be present in all your relationships and to just see where God's going to take you in those.
All right, okay. You know, Sydney and Kiana had such an honest and uncomplicated relationship. And I loved how they became family as they went to university.
Yeah, no kidding. And like you said earlier, they learned from their youth leaders, and now they get to share that knowledge with the youth at their church.
So good. And you know, this ties right back to our big idea. We know how to be faithful because God is faithful. So I want to encourage all of us to follow that example and be people who show God's love in the way that we live.
Yeah, and it can be super simple too. Look at God, follow His example, and you can have an impact on the lives of those around you.
Yes.
Let's break into our small groups so we can actually discuss how this would look like in our own lives.